In the grim darkness of the far future, the Imperium of Man stands as a monolithic but stagnant empire. One of the most striking aspects of Warhammer 40,000 lore is the virtual ban on technological innovation within the Imperium. Unlike other civilizations that continuously develop new science and weapons, the Imperium largely forbids true progress, instead clinging to ancient designs and rituals. In this video, we will explore why the Imperium's culture and beliefs have effectively outlawed technological advancement and examine whether this policy hampers humanity's wars against chaos and various xenos races. We'll also look at the notable exception to this rule, Archmagos Belisarius Cawl, and how his groundbreaking work defies the ban in hopes of saving the Imperium. This is a deep dive into Warhammer 40k's dark age of technology and the cultish dogma of the Adeptus Mechanicus. Let's uncover how a fear of innovation took hold and question if this stance is ultimately a fatal weakness for the Imperium of Man. To understand the Imperium's aversion to innovation, we must go back to its origins. During the 30th millennium, as the Emperor of Mankind unified humanity, he forged an alliance with Mars, home of the Mechanicum, the forerunner of the Adeptus Mechanicus. This alliance was formalized in the Treaty of Olympus, which came at a cost. Many scientific fields and advanced technologies were expressly forbidden. The Emperor, recognized by Mars as the Omniscire, the machine god's avatar, imposed strict restrictions on the Mechanicum's practices. Large swathes of knowledge held by the Forge Worlds were declared heretical, a category the Mechanicum calls heretechnica, heresy against the Omniscire's creed. In short, certain technologies and research avenues were outright banned in service of the Emperor's vision of order. Why would the Emperor shackle human innovation at the very moment he was expanding the Imperium? The reasons lie in humanity's turbulent past. During the earlier Dark Age of technology, mankind achieved astonishing heights of scientific achievement, only to be almost destroyed by it. The creation of artificial intelligences, known as the Men of Iron, ended in catastrophe when these machines rebelled against their creators, nearly wiping out humanity in a cataclysmic war. This trauma was seared into human memory. Advanced AI became synonymous with existential danger. Thus, even as the Emperor encouraged beneficial science, he placed absolute bans on certain technologies like true AI, dubbed abominable intelligence, forbidden genetic experiments, and unsafe warp-based inventions. He had seen the destruction that unchecked innovation could bring and was determined not to repeat humanity's past mistakes. The Treaty of Olympus's prescriptions reflected these fears. Artificial sentience was chief among the forbidden law. Creating or even researching machine minds was an act of tech heresy, punishable by death. Certain radical sciences, such as powerful warp manipulation or extreme genetic manipulation, the kind that created the Emperor's own Primarchs, were likewise condemned. Even many achievements from the Dark Age of technology itself were deemed too dangerous or blasphemous to pursue. The Emperor needed the Mechanicum's manufacturing might for his great crusade, but he also needed them to stay in line. By prohibiting their more esoteric experiments, he hoped to prevent another disaster and keep technological power under imperial control. These restrictions did not sit well with everyone. Within the Mechanicum, some tech priests hungered for unfettered knowledge and chafed at the Emperor's limits. Technomagi, who saw these rules as shackles on ambition and curiosity, eventually rebelled. During the Horus Heresy, the Fabricator General of Mars, Kelbor Hal, and many of his followers sided with Warmaster Horus, splitting off to form the Dark Mechanicum. Horus promised to sweep aside the Emperor's restrictions and let them delve into any science, including building forbidden AI or bonding demons into machines. This schism shows that right from the start, the Imperium's policy on tech was controversial. Loyalist tech priests accepted the dogma of restraint. Heretical ones became freewheeling creators of nightmare devices in service of chaos. After the heresy was over, the newly renamed Adeptus Mechanicus, the loyalist Mars priesthood, became, if anything, even more conservative, determined to avoid the path that led their brethren to damnation. The Adeptus Mechanicus is the imperial institution that controls all technological knowledge and manufacturing. They are often called the tech priests of Mars, and with good reason. Their approach to technology is fundamentally religious. According to the cult Mechanicus, knowledge itself is divine, the sacred emanation of the machine god, the Omnicia. Every piece of machinery has a spirit, and only through proper rituals and reverence can tech priests coax machines to function. This mystical attitude is codified in their doctrines, including the 16 universal laws, 8 mysteries, and 8 warnings. Several of these warnings explicitly discourage innovation and outside influence. For example, the alien mechanism is a perversion of the true path, and the knowledge of the ancients stands beyond question. To break with ritual is to break with faith. In other words, xenos technology is considered blasphemous, and the designs handed down from ancient times must never be questioned or altered. Straying from established holy schematics is literally an act of heresy in the eyes of Mars. Under such a creed, it's no surprise that the Mechanicus has all but lost the ability to innovate in any conventional sense. As the Warhammer 40k 8th edition Codex lore puts it, tech priests have lost the ability to innovate. No longer the master of its creations, the cult Mechanicus is enslaved to the past. The priesthood is content to maintain the glories of yesteryear with rite, dogma, and edict instead of true discernment and comprehension. Even simple tasks like firing up an engine or repairing a vehicle must be done by rote rituals, anointing with sacred oils, intoning machine hymns, rather than by applying engineering know-how. The Adeptus Mechanicus behaves more like a church, preserving relics, than a dynamic research and development department. Of course, this does not mean absolutely no research happens. The Mechanicus still engages in the quest for knowledge, but they interpret it as a quest to recover what was lost, not to invent the genuinely new. They believe all knowledge in the universe already exists, as bestowed by the Omnicia. Humanity's role is merely to rediscover and piece it together. Basic scientific research is disdained, seen as trying to dissect the works of the Omnicia rather than faithfully studying existing lore. Nevertheless, a trickle of original development does occur on Mars and some Forge worlds, but at a glacial pace, enough to keep Imperial technology advancing steadily, if extremely slowly. In practical terms, centuries or millennia might pass before a notable technical improvement appears, and even then, it's often minor or kept secret. So, since creating brand new designs is heretical, how does the Imperium ever get any new equipment? The answer lies in ancient standard template constructs, STCs. STCs were the great achievement of the bygone Dark Age, universal blueprints and fabrication systems containing humanity's entire store of knowledge. In the current age of the Imperium, functioning STC systems are essentially lost, but fragments of their data or printouts survive. Recovering STC templates is the holy grail of the Mechanicus. Expeditions scour lost human colonies and forgotten vaults for any fragment of an STC. When an Archmagos uncovers a new STC template, it can lead to a new weapon or device for the Imperium, though in truth, it's really an old design being rediscovered. For example, during the Great Crusade, tech priest Archon Land famously found STC designs for what became the Land Raider tank and Land Speeder. These ancient templates enabled the mass production of those vehicles, which were then hailed as new additions to the Imperial arsenal. Thus, the Imperium's only socially acceptable route to advancement is archaeotechnology, digging up lost blueprints. If it isn't in an STC or an archived data loam somewhere, the Mechanicus won't dare build it. As one observer noted, Imperial technological progress entirely hinges on finding new STCs. They still haven't matched the level of tech from the dark age of technology due to their superstition and fear of change. The result is a massive galactic empire fighting wars in the 41st millennium, with equipment designs often 5,000 to 10,000 years old. In many cases, today's Space Marines and Imperial Guard march to battle with weapon patterns identical to those used during the Horus Heresy. Furthermore, the Adeptus Mechanicus and Imperial law strictly forbid trying to fill gaps by other means. Experimentation outside the approved patterns is tech heresy, plain and simple. The punishment for a tinkering guardsman or a heretical inventor is often death. Even using alien technology is an unforgivable sin. Most xenos tech is considered forbidden by the tech priests, and any who dabble in such blasphemous experiments are hunted with righteous fury. The Imperium would rather destroy a superior alien device than allow its citizens to study or reverse engineer it. There are secretive sects within the Mechanicus, like the Xenorites of Styges 8, who do collect and test xenotech, but they tread a fine line and are viewed with extreme suspicion. The clear message from on high is innovation equals heresy. Only the Omnissiah, or his ancient servants, can sanction a design. Everyone else must stand beyond question of the old ways. Given this pervasive ban on advancement, one must ask, is the Imperium handicapping itself in the endless wars against chaos and alien species? In many respects, yes. The Imperium's refusal to innovate has put it at a disadvantage, forcing it to fight modern threats with outdated methods. However, the answer isn't entirely one-sided, because this stagnation comes with certain perverse advantages too. Let's examine both sides. On one hand, the Imperium's tech stagnation clearly leaves it struggling to keep up with adaptive enemies. The Young Tau Empire, for instance, is a species that has rocketed ahead technologically in a few millennia. The Tau continuously refine their weapons and armor. Each generation of battlesuits and starships is more advanced than the last. Meanwhile, the Imperium's forces confronting them, such as in the Damocles Gulf Crusades, often rely on war gear patterns as old as the Great Crusade. Imperial Guard regiments armed with lasguns and Lehman Russ tanks, robust but antiquated designs, face Tau fire warriors carrying state-of-the-art pulse rifles and guided missile pods. The Tau's willingness to embrace innovation and even limited AI in their drones gives them a precision and efficiency the Imperium can rarely emulate. Only the Space Marines, with their elite equipment and the sheer numbers of the Guard, prevent the Tau from outclassing Imperial forces entirely. The Imperium's refusal to adapt quickly means it typically wins through attrition and brute force, not by matching the enemy's tech. The same pattern holds against other xenos. The Eldari, or Eldar, possess incredibly advanced technology, like psychically grown wraithbone constructs and the webway for travel, relics of their own ancient empire. The Imperium cannot replicate webway travel. In fact, the Emperor's secret project to create a human-controlled webway died with him on the Golden Throne, and no tech priest since has been able to rediscover that science. Instead, humans still rely on risky warp travel that requires psychic navigators and subjects them to chaos predation. Against the Necrons, the gap is even wider. Necron technology, inertialess drives, Gauss weapons, living metal, is millennia beyond human understanding. An Imperial commander can only pray to overwhelm Necrons with sheer firepower or numbers, because out-inventing them is impossible. Even the Orcs, crude as their technology appears, have the advantage of improvisation. Orc mech boys are innate tinkerers who bash together bizarre new guns and vehicles on a whim, often guided by subconscious psychic know-how. The Imperium's machine cult would never countenance a random engineer bolting a new engine onto a tank just to see what happens. But Orcs do it every day, sometimes with surprisingly effective results. Thus, in unpredictable battlefields, like when a big mech unveils a crazy new shock attack gun or force field, the Imperium's inflexibility can leave them flat-footed. The forces of chaos also exploit Imperial stagnation. Traitor Marines and the Dark Mechanicum have no strictures holding them back. Over 10,000 years, the Chaos side has developed demon engines and twisted technological terrors precisely because they are free to experiment with arcane science. A Chaos warpsmith might fuse a tank with a demonic entity to create a possessed superweapon. The Loyalist Mechanicus would never attempt such a thing, for good reason, one might add. Chaos fleets and legions often use corrupted versions of the same Imperial hardware from the Heresy era, meaning they haven't necessarily leapt ahead in pure tech, but they augment it in horrifying ways. The result is that the Imperium frequently faces foes with unusual capabilities they struggle to counter. Whether it's chaos-corrupted machine plagues, xeno-biomechanical horrors, or adaptive shield technologies, the Imperium's answer is usually reactive. They dust off an ancient STC weapon if one exists, or more often, simply throw more troops into the grinder. True innovation is not their forte, and that can cost lives. On the other hand, one could argue the Imperium's cautious approach has been a grim necessity in a universe full of hidden perils. Consider the upside to banning certain technologies. The Imperium has largely avoided another AI uprising or a self-inflicted apocalypse, at least so far. The horror story of the Men of Iron still looms large. By forbidding soulless sentience as the enemy of all, the Emperor and Mechanicus ensured humanity would not create another Skynet-like menace. In a galaxy teeming with chaos corruption, random innovation can be extremely dangerous. A well-meaning Magos could accidentally invent a device that opens a warp rift or attracts daimonic possession, a nightmare the strict rituals help prevent. The Mechanicus's insistence on ritual and formula over curiosity provides a kind of quality control. Only tested, sanctified designs get reproduced, minimizing catastrophic failures. It also enforces galactic standardization. Every guard regiment can use the same pattern of lasgun. Every Navy ship is built to a template that tech priests understand, even if they only half understand it. In war, this consistency can be an asset. Logistics and repairs are easier when everything conforms to an STC pattern, and tech priests know exactly which litanies to recite for which machine. Rapid innovation might lead to fractured supply lines or weapons that no one knows how to fix when they break. The Imperium's vast armies rely on mass production of trusted, if old, designs that have worked for millennia. You can drop a Space Marine from 40k into a battle in 30k, and he'd find his power armor and bolter not too different from those of his ancestors. Nonetheless, as the 41st millennium turns into the 42nd, the era Indomitus, it's increasingly apparent that the Imperium's technological conservatism is holding it back in critical ways. The galaxy has grown more dangerous. The Eye of Terror tore open into the gigantic Great Rift, splitting the Imperium in half with a warp storm. New crusades of chaos, ever-evolving tyrannid hive fleets, and the ambitious expansion of younger races like the Tau all present threats that the old ways struggle to contain. The heroic last stands and attritional victories of the past aren't a sustainable strategy forever. This realization is setting the stage for an internal conflict within the Imperium, whether to maintain the faithful stagnation or to adapt and innovate despite taboo. And at the center of that conflict stands one man, or rather, one cybernetica augmented man, Archmagos Belisarius Cawl.
If there is a figure in modern 40k lore who represents breaking the rules for the greater good,
it is Belisarius Cawl. Cawl is an Archmagos of the Adeptus Mechanicus, over 10,000 years old, who has openly defied many of the cult's orthodoxies in pursuit of saving the Imperium. In fact, many of his fellow tech priests consider him an outright heretic. Within the cult Mechanicus, whisperings labeled Cawl an arch-heretic for his willingness to ignore the machine god's traditional commandments. Cawl has trafficked with xenos, employed forbidden sciences, and done things that, under normal times, might have gotten him executed as a tech heretic. Yet today, he is lauded as one of the Imperium's greatest benefactors, proof that desperation can force even the Imperium to bend its rules. Belisarius Cawl's most famous achievement is the creation of the Primaris Space Marines. In secret, on Guilliman's orders dating back to the end of the Horus Heresy, Cawl spent millennia researching how to improve upon the Emperor's greatest warriors. This was a monumental task. It meant altering the holy gene seed of the Space Marines, experimenting with genetics and biotechnology that most of the Mechanicus would never dare touch. Yet Cawl succeeded. By the time Robute Guilliman, Primarch of the Ultramarines, was resurrected in the present era, Cawl had entire armies of new Primaris Marines and their equipment ready to deploy. These Primaris were taller, stronger Astartes with additional gene organs, more robust implants, and few of the deficiencies that had plagued certain original legions. To support them, Cawl also developed the Mark X power armor, a new power armor pattern combining the best of previous marks and a suite of new weapons and vehicles. For example, he reintroduced advanced anti-gravitic vehicles, hover tanks like the Repulsor and anti-grav jet bikes, which had been lost technology in the Imperium for centuries. He designed new plasma weapon variants and other arms specifically for the Primaris, many of which did not come straight from any known STC, but from his own genius or synthesis of various data. In short, Cawl did the unthinkable. He innovated. The impact of Cawl's work on the Imperium's war effort has been profound. During the Indomitus Crusade, the great Imperial counteroffensive after the Great Rift's opening, Cawl's Primaris Marines and their tech were instrumental in shoring up beleaguered planets. They brought a surge of fresh strength where it was desperately needed. Cawl also personally helped resurrect Guilliman by providing him with a custom-built suit of armor, the Armor of Fate, and working alongside the Eldar, Ynnari, to heal the Primarch. This is another example of Cawl flouting taboo, cooperating with xenos, using alien Eldar craft-world technology, and even Eldar spiritual rituals to achieve a human victory. Most tech priests would recoil at the idea of mixing human and alien knowledge, but Cawl is results-driven above all. He has even studied the Necron's enigmatic Blackstone pylons in hope of replicating their function to close warp rifts and seal off chaos incursions. This means actively examining and reverse engineering Necron technology, a practice that would be heresy under any other circumstance. Yet with half the galaxy torn open by warp storms, the ability to use Necron anti-warp tech could save humanity, so Cawl pursues it. Not surprisingly, Cawl's crusade of innovation has made him plenty of enemies and skeptics. The ruling priesthood of Mars is deeply uncomfortable with how far he's pushed the limits. Many in the Mechanicus hate Cawl and would gladly denounce him as a traitor if not for the results he's achieved for the Imperium's survival. They see him as having disregarded all of the machine god's commandments, a maverick who breaks the very laws that define their order. Indeed, Cawl has admitted that he is not afraid of innovation or of improving upon the Emperor's work. From the perspective of conservative tech priests, that is blasphemy born of hubris. Even Guilliman keeps a wary eye on Cawl. The Primarch is grateful for what Cawl has accomplished. Without Cawl's inventions, Guilliman's own return and the Imperium's stabilization would have been far less successful. Yet Guilliman, being a product of the Emperor's rational but cautious outlook, knows well that unrestrained innovation can court disaster. He worries that Cawl's desire for innovation could lead him to walk the same path that led the original Dark Mechanicum into damnation over 10,000 years ago. In other words, if Cawl goes too far, delving into truly profane tech or creating another Men of Iron scenario, he could become as big a threat as those he seeks to overcome. Guilliman has even resolved that if that day comes, he will deal harshly with Cawl despite their alliance. This highlights a central tension of the Imperium's stance on technology. Innovation is needed, but innovation is also dangerous. For now, Cawl walks a tightrope. He has a small following of like-minded tech priests who have broken from orthodox dogma and support his push for progress. This splinter group sees innovation not as heresy but as salvation, and they work in secret to aid Cawl's projects. At the same time, conservative elements within the cult Mechanicus view him as a necessary evil at best or an active heretic at worst. Cawl himself mitigates some of the blowback by obeying forms of propriety. He often couches his inventions as discoveries or improvements of STC designs, giving at least nominal reverence to the past. He's also careful in how he presents his more egregious creations. For example, Cawl built an advanced AI-like device called the Cawl Inferior, essentially a thinking machine to help him communicate and calculate across vast distances. The Cawl Inferior is a blasphemous hybrid of cogitator computers, cloned organic brains, and even xenos components. By any measure, it skirts dangerously close to creating an abominable intelligence. But Cawl argues it is not a true AI, since it uses human servitor brains and only performs predetermined reasoning routines. Thanks to such loopholes, he can claim he hasn't technically broken the Emperor's ban on machine sentience. This is emblematic of Cawl's approach: push the envelope, but find a justification to avoid outright charges of tech heresy. The Imperium's ban on technological advancement is a defining feature of Warhammer 40k's lore, a tragic paradox of a once enlightened humanity now shackled by fear and superstition. We've seen that this ban originated from legitimate horrors in the past and was codified by the Emperor and the cult Mechanicus to protect humanity from itself. In many ways, it did protect humanity, sparing it from repeating the sins of the Men of Iron or delving into warp-fueled doomsday experiments. Yet, as the galaxy grows ever more hostile, the Imperium's rigid adherence to the old ways has become a glaring weakness. The wars against chaos and the xenos show that adaptation can be the key to victory. and the Imperium has been loath to adapt. Is this aversion to progress disadvantageous? Largely, yes. It has left the Imperium technologically stagnant, often outpaced or outmaneuvered by more innovative foes. The lack of new ideas means the Imperium fights with the same tools and tactics even as enemies evolve new ones. However, this very stagnation has been strangely integral to the Imperium's endurance, providing stability, uniformity, and a bulwark against catastrophically dangerous tech. It's a classic Warhammer 40k irony that what protects humanity also damns it to mediocrity. Belisarius Cawl represents a potential turning point. By selectively breaking the rules, he has given the Imperium a much-needed edge. Superior Space Marines, revived technologies, and perhaps soon the means to mend the Emperor's own realm, if he can harness Necron pylons to close the Great Rift. Cawl's actions suggest that the Imperium can achieve great leaps forward, but only by defying its long-held taboos. Whether this will lead to a renaissance or inadvertently to a new dark age remains an open question. Guilliman's cautious optimism versus the Mechanicus' outrage encapsulates that uncertainty. In the end, the Imperium's war against chaos and the xenos may force a painful evolution. The ban on technological advancement, once a shield, now threatens to become a shackle. Perhaps the wisdom of the ancients that the Mechanicus holds so sacred includes knowing when to change with the times. If not, humanity's refusal to innovate might prove as deadly as any alien invasion or chaos incursion. Only by balancing reverence for the past with bravery to face the future can the Imperium hope to survive the trials of the 42nd millennium. In the grim darkness of the far future, there may finally be a glimmer of something long thought heretical: progress.